Ladies and gentlemen, stop whatever you're doing, because what I'm about to tell you is going to make your jaw hit the floor harder than a rapper's chain in a dice game gone wrong. Are we about to witness the fall of Houston's so-called godfather of rap? Did Boosie just light a match that's about to burn down the entire Mob Ties empire? And more importantly, is the street legend J. Prince finally about to face the kind of heat you can't talk your way out of? Picture this. 1 minute you're running Houston like it's your own personal Monopoly board. The next minute your so-called friend is on record spilling tea so hot it could melt the gold off Duke the Jeweler's chains. And let's not forget Takeoff's death is still one of the most chilling moments in rap history. Now, people are whispering, no, shouting, that these tragedies weren't just bad luck, they were chess moves in a deadly game. And here's the craziest part. The feds might have been sitting in the shadows this whole time, just waiting for one slip-up. Well, folks, Boosie might have just handed them the playbook. Stay right here. 'Cause the truth, or at least the truth they don't want you to hear, it's about to get ugly. So here we are again with another scandal that is shaking the twinkle. Like, we shaking the foundations of the hip-hop world. And this time, it is not some petty back and forth over a diss track or an Instagram story, but something much darker and far more dangerous, because at the center of it all is J. Prince. The man who has been a shadowy figure of power in Houston for decades. A figure who built Rap-A-Lot Records into a brand that is respected in the music business and feared in the streets. Someone whose name carries weight in both boardrooms and back alleys. For years, his reputation has been that of a man you do not cross, a figure who can open doors for artists or shut them permanently. A man whose influence stretches beyond music into the very culture of the city. But now his carefully crafted image is under a microscope again after Boosie Badass, never known for holding his tongue, allegedly let slip information that connects J. Prince to not just one, but two of the most talked about and tragic incidents in recent rap history. Killing of Duke the Jeweler and the murder of Takeoff. If you are not familiar with the background, Duke the Jeweler was a flashy and successful jeweler from Chicago who had a love for high-stakes gambling, especially dice games, and when he came down to Houston to be part of one of those games connected to Prince Jr.'s circle, it was supposed to be a celebration of money, status, and street respect. But instead of flying back home with a victory, Duke was robbed, attacked, and shot dead before he could even reach his car. Then there was Takeoff, a beloved member of Migos, who was in Houston under the so-called protection of J. Prince's son, Jazz Prince, only to be gunned down in an incident that shook the entire hip-hop community. These events were already clouded in rumors and speculation, but now with Boosie's alleged words floating around, it has taken on a new level of heat, especially with whispers that the feds have been quietly building a case against J. Prince for years, keeping their cards close, until someone slipped and gave them what they needed. The streets say J. Prince has long run Houston like it is his own territory, where everyone from artists to promoters is expected to check in when they come through, and that he maintains order through influence, intimidation, and a network of loyal associates who make sure his will is carried out. Critics have called it Mob Ties, not just as a brand name, but as a way of life, a hierarchy where the top man never gets his hands dirty but always knows what is going on. The fact that both Duke and Takeoff were tied to dice games involving people connected to his sons only fuels the narrative that these are not isolated tragedies but part of a pattern, where winners often do not get to leave as winners. And now with alleged leaked DEA files being talked about in blogs and on YouTube, portraying J. Prince as the head of what they call a silent rap cartel. The pieces are being put together in a way that is almost too perfect for a prosecutor looking to build a RICO case. RICO is designed to take down leaders of criminal enterprises even if they never personally commit the crime. And in this story, that is exactly the angle being whispered about. The idea is simple. If you control the territory, the people, and the business, you are responsible for the violence that keeps that control in place. And when you add in moments like the NBA YoungBoy incident in 2020, when J. Prince publicly claimed to have retrieved stolen property and offered to return it, which many saw as a power play. You begin to see why the narrative is sticking. Young boy himself rejected the gesture publicly, telling J. Prince to keep his name out of anything public and not to try to make connections through social media, which to many looked like someone refusing to bow to that influence. Combine that public defiance with Boosie's alleged comments, and you have a storyline where the walls are closing in on a man who has avoided serious charges for decades. And the air in Houston's rap scene is thick with the feeling that something big is about to happen. The whispers have only grown louder as more so-called insider information begins to circulate, and while none of it is officially confirmed, the timing is suspicious enough to keep everyone on edge, with people in the industry exchanging knowing looks and hushed comments as if they all sense that the balance of power in Houston might be shifting. The chatter is filled with references to old D-files from the 90s and early 2000s that allegedly describe J. Prince as a shot caller operating under the cover of rap. A lot records with the kind of influence that extended deep into both the music business and the streets. Those old investigations never stuck, supposedly because the agents involved were dirty or because key witnesses suddenly changed their stories. But now the suggestion is that those same files could be dusted off and merged with new allegations to create a RICO case built for modern times. Anonymous sources claim that law enforcement has been collecting digital evidence from social media, tracking cash flows from businesses linked to the Prince family, and interviewing people who have waited years to finally speak out. The focus is not just on the murders of Duke the Jeweler and Takeoff, but on a broader picture of a network that allegedly uses dice games, concert after parties, and check-in requirements as both a way to maintain control and as cover for illegal activities. The stories coming out are wild, painting a picture of backroom deals, intimidation tactics, and an unspoken understanding that if you win big in the wrong room, you might not walk out of it with your pockets full. One particularly juicy claim being passed around is that after Duke's big wins, certain people in the room started making calls. That set off a chain of events leading directly to the robbery and shooting, with the understanding that such actions send a message to anyone thinking they can come into Houston and leave richer than they arrived. In Takeoff's case, the whispers suggest that the so-called protection he had was more symbolic than real, and that the argument leading to the shooting was part of a larger tension that had been brewing between different circles in the city's underground scene. Then there are the claims about law enforcement in Houston allegedly being hesitant to challenge the Prince family with critics, like Charleston White going public saying even the police and the mayor's office are scared of them. It feeds into the image of untouchability that J. Prince has cultivated over the years. An image that prosecutors would love to break if they could show it is built on fear and criminal influence. The financial side of the alleged empire is another piece of the puzzle, with speculation about how money flows through businesses. It's tied to the family, from record sales to event promotions to clothing brands like Mob Ties, and how some of that could be used to launder funds from less legitimate sources. The leaked rumors claim investigators are looking for any transactions that connect directly to bribes, extortion payments, or proceeds from robberies. Such a link can be made, it would be a huge step toward building a federal case. Meanwhile, social media has been both a blessing and a curse for J. Prince, giving him a platform to tell his side of the story, but also preserving moments where his public statements seem to align too neatly with events that prosecutors might argue show a pattern of control and involvement. The NBA Youngboy incident is often brought up in this context as an example of J. Prince presenting himself as a problem solver, while critics see it as him flexing his reach. Add in Boosie's alleged revelation, and you have a storyline where old grudges, public confrontations, and long-standing rumors are all swirling together into a perfect storm. The more these stories are retold, the more they take on a life of their own, with every retelling adding new details. New accusations and new names to the mix until the original truth is almost impossible to separate from the street legend that has grown around it. As the tension builds, the speculation about what happens next is reaching a fever pitch with some in the industry, convinced that federal indictments are not just possible but inevitable, while others believe that J. Prince's history of avoiding serious charges means he will once again find a way to come out untouched. The talk is that if prosecutors can connect the recent violent incidents to older patterns described in the leaked D files, they could present a narrative that J. Prince has been running an ongoing criminal enterprise for decades, using his music business as both a shield and a tool for influence. The RICO statute is tailor-made for situations like this because it does not require the leader to pull the trigger or physically commit the crime. It only requires proof that they directed or benefited from the criminal activity carried out by the organization. This is where the deaths of Duke the Jeweler and Takeoff could become key points for the government, because even without direct evidence tying J. Prince to either act, the proximity of his family and associates to both events could be painted as part of a pattern of violent enforcement designed to maintain control. Then there is the matter of money, because if investigators can follow the trail from these incidents to any suspicious financial activity in the Mob Ties brand, Rap-A-Lot Records, or any of the other connected businesses, it could strengthen a money laundering charge and make the case nearly impossible to defend against. People in Houston are reportedly watching this unfold with a mix of fascination and fear, knowing that if the federal government decides to make its move, the fallout could shake the entire city's music scene. Industry insiders are already whispering about who might testify if it comes to that, with names being thrown around of artists, promoters, and even former associates who might turn on the Princes in exchange for their own safety or lighter sentences. The internet has been relentless, with old interviews, photos, and videos being dug up and reanalyzed frame by frame for anything that could be spun as incriminating. Some clips are being replayed where J. Prince talks about handling problems in-house and where he dismisses public speculation as lies made up by people who live off drama. But in the court of public opinion, those statements are now being interpreted through the lens of the current allegations. The mob boss image that once inspired respect is now being used by critics as evidence of exactly the kind of leadership role RICO was designed to prosecute. Boosie's alleged comments have acted like lighter fluid on an already burning fire, giving the impression that even those once considered close to J. Prince might be willing to air dirty laundry that benefits them or keeps them out of trouble. Whether Boosie actually said what is being claimed, or whether it is just another layer of rumor in this tangled web, almost doesn't matter anymore, because the narrative has taken on its own momentum, and the more people talk, the more it sticks. The question now is whether the feds will move while the public's attention is locked on this story, or whether they will wait, building a case slowly and methodically to make sure it holds up in court. Either way, the stakes could not be higher, because if the government can successfully frame this as the dismantling of a long-running criminal empire, it would not only be a career-ending blow for J. Prince, but a seismic shift in how power operates in Houston's rap world. And if they fail, it will only reinforce his legend as a man who can stare down law enforcement, public scrutiny, and industry betrayal without ever losing his grip on the city. He has dominated for decades. So now that you have heard the full picture, the rumors, the whispers, the so-called leaks, and the explosive claims being thrown around, the question is, what do you believe? Do you think this is the moment the walls finally close in on J. Prince and the Mob Ties brand? Or is this just another round of sensational headlines that will fade away like so many before? The truth might be buried under layers of loyalty, fear, and myth. But one thing is certain: the eyes of the hip-hop world and the streets of Houston are locked on what happens next. The federal government does not move unless they think they can win. And if they move on this, the impact could change the way the industry works forever. But maybe, just maybe, we are witnessing the next chapter in the legend of a man who has made a career out of walking through fire without getting burned, Either way, I want to hear your take. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let the world know where you stand. And if you want more of these raw, unfiltered deep dives, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because the story is just getting started.